Hello.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to today's webinar. And yet again, I'm delighted that so many of you have managed to join us today. This is the 13th webinar in the series we've been running now for, I was going to say about a year, but it must be 13 months. And I hope everybody's finding these webinars of value. Certainly, we're thoroughly enjoying meeting a load of our guest speakers and enjoying all the feedback we've been getting from everybody. Just a couple of housekeeping rules first. If you wouldn't mind keeping yourselves on mute, that's really important because otherwise we have an awful lot of background noise. And then at the request of our speakers, for those of you who are currently hiding from us, if you could be good enough to put yourselves on camera, that really helps. It helps us because it enables our speakers to get some feedback in how your expressions are and to give them some sort of idea of whether the content they're delivering is working for you. So if you wouldn't mind putting yourselves on camera, that would really help us. Absolutely delighted today to say that we're focusing our time for the next hour and a half or so on the crucial subject that is nutrition in early years, and what we can do to give the children in our care the best start in life nutritionally. I'm really excited to welcome Catherine Tate to our team today. Catherine Tate, also known as a food teacher, is working with us along with Kyla Forey and Jill Hayho from Watermead Nursery. You're grinning at me now, Kyla, thank you for that. From Watermead Nursery, and they're going to be sharing us the wealth of experience that they have on this very important topic. So Catherine is talking first, and if you'll allow me to introduce her, Catherine is a qualified and award-winning registered nutritional therapist. God, that's hard work. She's published several books and is delivering the national curriculum through food. More recently, however, she's launched the Youngest Chef of the Year award exclusively for the early years sector. The award's been designed for the EYFS and written by teachers for early years practitioners. For those of you whose favorite book is The Very Hungry Caterpillar, as it is mine, it's all designed around that concept. Catherine will be discussing practitioners and role models, leading by example, the growing child's developing brain, Fussy Eaters, and I'm sure we've all got some of those in our care, cold cooking, changing seasons in our immune system, and helping to educate parents. After Catherine's talk, we'll be joined by Jill and Kyla, as I said earlier, from Watermead Nursery. Watermead is an outstanding nursery who are inspired by the Reggio Emilia philosophy. They've just been nominated for 2 major awards, or finalists, should I say, for 2 major awards. That's the 2021 Nursery World Award and the Nursery Management Today Awards. Good luck, ladies, for both. Jill and Kyla will be discussing policies, nutrition, weaning, and well-being. They'll go on to talk about it's all about planning, cookery school, it doesn't need to be complicated, and then food activities and the EYFS. So that's the introduction. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome to you Catherine Tate today. Catherine, floor's all yours. Let's hear what you have to say. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, and I can even see a couple of chefs in their outfits, so that's really great as well. I'm just going to do the technical thing of sharing my screen, hopefully. If I can do that. It's saying I can't do that, Gail. Hopefully.
Try now, Catherine. I think it was a technical issue at our end.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Okay. So hopefully you can see that now. It's great. Okay, so there is literally so much I can talk about today, and I've tried to sort of take a snapshot of a few things that I think would be really useful just to share with you. As well as being a registered nutritional therapist, I actually started my career as a teacher. I'm a qualified primary school teacher, so I come at this very much from a teaching perspective as well as part of my background. So I thought I'd set the scene with a quote from Jamie Oliver, which I think sums it up really well. It's so important that every child deserves to know about food. They deserve to know about where it comes from, how we cook it, and most importantly, how what we eat really affects our bodies. And that's kind of one of the key messages that I do through a lot of the work that I do with schools. I see food education up there as important a life skill as reading and writing. And I kind of feel that over the last few generations, many of these skills have been lost. And we almost need to re-educate our children around food and get them much more streetwise about food and their sort of understanding. So I thought I'd touch today on, if I can just move my slide. That's it. On the opportunities that I can see are out there for early years. And then thinking about the whole child, I thought I'd just talk about the brain and the development of the brain, which is quite important with young children that you work with. Talking about some of the practical ideas that you can bring into your teaching and into your settings, how to inspire yourselves and also the people and the parents, the children, and then I'll bring that all together with a summary at the end. So we know that the impact of food education is far-reaching, and we know that if we get it right, it can have a massive, massive impact. And probably the most important thing is the potential long-term impact that food education can have on people's health. You may have come across a famous quote from a Greek physician, Hippocrates, 400 BC, who said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." And I think food is so important with regard to long-term health, but mental health, your immune health, the brain and the nervous system, all of those factors. And getting this important message out to the parents that we engage with, the children that we work with, is really key in helping sort of lay down these foundations around health. So there are so many opportunities within settings, and I think these shouldn't be underestimated. Schools and nurseries are sort of full of these sort of opportunities, but you may have come across the work of Dan Buettner, who looked at blue zones, which are areas all over the world which have over 100, lots of centurions, people living to over 100. And there's places in Japan, California. And one of the things that they say are absolutely key is the environment. And your settings are great places to set up the right environment to educate children around food, which is really, really key. Also, we know that settings are brilliant places for behavioural change. There's been some really interesting research recently that if you can get children to sit for 25 minutes to eat their food, which is a very long time with your very young children, but getting children to sit for longer to eat their food will help engage them to eat more fruit and vegetables, which we obviously know is really important. So settings do provide an opportunity for behavioural change. Teachers are great role models for children, and we should never underestimate how important we are in the eyes of the children that we work with. And just role modeling some of the really good nutrition, the things that you eat, the way that you sit with the children and eat, all of that kind of engagement is also really important. And I also talk with a lot of settings about food culture. Developing really good food culture within your setting will be hugely beneficial for everybody that engages with it. And food culture touches on various different things. If you think about your whole setting and you think about food within your setting, look at all these different areas. So you think about your provision of food, the environment and how you bring in food and food education within your particular environment, your community links. Do you engage with the parents to sort of bring different cultural food links into your setting? Do you engage with local allotments, local restaurants, local chefs? There's so many different people around food that you can kind of engage with to develop culture within your setting. The practical skills, which is obviously something that we always really look at, is thinking about how we engage children around sort of the practical skills around food education. Also yourself as role models, the different cross-curricular links and connections about understanding the world, all of those factors is really important. But the one which I always say has to be in place is the leadership. If the leadership of your setting does not buy into the importance of food and that value of food education, then it makes it really challenging to develop a really strong culture around food. So having a strong leader who has that, that value of food is really important as well. And as Confucius said, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. And that's why getting the practical aspect into your setting is also very, very important. And I'm sure many of you do this really well already. And there's loads of good practice that's happening out there in schools. So thinking about the opportunities, I thought I'd touch a little bit on the sort of nutrition education. And there's so many aspects around thinking about the whole child when you think about nutrition. So certainly when I'm working with children, I talk about the importance of growing, fighting germs, the immune health, their immune system developing, strong teeth and bones, so the structure, their energy and that being very balanced rather than very up and down. We talk about the brain through thinking about concentration, learning and being happy, and also sleeping well. So there is so much to sort of talk to you about nutrition-wise with regard to all of these areas, but I thought I'd just focus in today on just thinking about the brain. So we know that the human brain is hugely complex. The brain actually takes priority over all other organs in the body, and it uses up 20% of your oxygen and your nutrient supply. So it's hugely demanding, metabolically in your body. And the young child's brain is remarkably plastic. So it kind of changes and alters quite rapidly, and it responds very quickly to the world around it. And I thought I'd talk about it because lots of things happen to the brain of young children, and which can kind of link in a lot to what you're doing and your understanding of the children that you work with. So I think years and years ago, we used to think that brains was genetic. If you were super clever, that got passed on from your family. But actually, we've come to discover that 50% of the brain structure is actually from genetics. And the other 50% is called epigenetics, the factors that are environmental that then feed into the growing structure and development of the brain. So this can include nutrition, and we know that nutrition is absolutely key for the brain. Just a few little interesting facts to throw out around some research that's been done. They've discovered that ADHD children often typically have low levels of zinc and copper. So we know that zinc and copper have a very important role in the brain and the development. There's also a very strong link between autism and low iron, which is interesting. And also we know a little bit about fussy eaters can have low levels of zinc. And obviously with COVID, we've all come to understand that a loss of taste, sense and smell can be linked to COVID, but also that zinc is important in the recovery of that sense of taste and smell. So that's what we've known a long while about fussy eaters, is that they can often have low zinc, which can obviously affect what they're tasting and eating. We also know that learning is really key for the development of the brain structure, and also exercise, which I'm going to touch on as well. So just to give you a little bit of info about how the brain develops, the brain actually develops around 1 month after conception, and it continues until about your mid-20s. And unfortunately, then you start to lose a few brain cells, but by the time you're 70, you should have a pretty good brain. You won't have lost too many if you've looked after yourself well. Initially, what happens is that during pregnancy, the brain develops to ensure survival at birth. So your very basic connections get laid down, and this is around suckling and breathing to enable that, when you're born, you can do that, you can survive in the world. And during this time, up to about age 2, the brain goes through a very rapid brain growth spurt. And it's during this time that all your other connections get laid down, And also the brain is quite plastic. So you have connections being laid down. If they're not used again, they get lost and new connections get developed, which is why lots of experiences is really important, because this helps to develop more and more brain connections and helps the brain to sort of to shape itself. Then you go through the next key area with regard to your brain, and that's during adolescence. And during adolescence is when things are sort of pruned, if you like. If you don't use it, you lose it. And the brain goes through a degree of programming. And obviously other cognitive areas are laid down. So the adolescence is also a really, really key stage. But also I thought I'd just talk to you about the changes in the brain as well from different ages. So, and this helps people kind of understand children's different stages with regard to their emotional development as well. Because initially, up to about 0 to 2, the brain is very much focused on sensory motor, and everything goes into the mouth. And you'll be completely familiar with this. Everything gets put into the child's mouth. And then from about age 2 to probably about 6 or 7, they go through a pre-operational stage where they can then start to develop their understanding around colour, shape. They very much focus on the right side of the brain. That's the area that develops primarily up to about age 7. And then when they get to about 7 to 11, the brain then switches over to use more of the left side. So it then kind of evens out in using both sides of the brain. And when the child moves over to using a bit more of their left side of the brain, they start to develop a little bit more logical thinking, a little bit more analysis. So that kind of comes into play then. So expecting children younger than 7 to be able to analyze situations, think through things quite logically is obviously really challenging for their brain. Their brain hasn't got to that point until they're about 7. And then when they hit 11 upwards, they then start to undergo this rewiring. You have the hormonal changes that happen as well. And this helps them develop much more abstract thinking, much more moral reasoning, and you have that much more adult brain developed. So, so I said about structure, it's really important to think about environment, the learning, the exercise, but also the food. And as well as the micronutrients such as zinc and copper and iodine and iron, all of those things that are really key for the brain. Probably one of the most important things to talk to people about is the importance of protein, fat and carbohydrate, which all have really key roles to play in the development of the brain. So protein is important for the cell synthesis, for the cells of the brain to develop, the structure of the brain, but also for the neurotransmitters. So they create the whole structure of your nervous system and enable messages to travel throughout your body. So when you touch something hot with your finger, the neurotransmitters send messages up to the brain and back down, and you move your finger very rapidly. So protein is really key for that. And, I also work with a lot of clients around nutrition and their own health. And when I say to people about protein, people will often ask me, what is that? Where am I getting my protein? So just being mindful that you get your protein from meat, eggs, cheese, fish, all of those sources. And if you're a vegetarian, probably from lentils, beans, nuts and seeds. So protein is really important. We also need fats, and focusing on good fats for the body is also important. So fats from things like fish, so oily fish, eggs, nuts, seeds, all of those things, extra virgin olive oil, they all provide really good sources of fat. Also things like coconut, avocado, really, really good sources of fat. And fat is really important for the structure of the nervous system. And all those little neurotransmitters that send messages are all coated by myelin, which you may remember from school yourself. And that helps messages to get sent effectively. That's like the insulation of your nervous system. So fat is really important with regard to that. But obviously, you know, we need to be mindful that we're not talking about trans fats that we get from sort of processed foods or junk foods. Those are the kind of fats that can be quite damaging for the brain. So focusing on the really, really good fats. And then carbohydrates are also important because they provide glucose and fuel for the brain. And so also thinking about your good sources of carbohydrates, which I'm going to touch on in a little bit in a minute. And then you've also got all your vitamins and minerals, which are also key for the brain. So one of the most important things I talk about with clients, and which is really key for the brain, it's a really great message to talk to children about on a sort of on a very basic level, but also to talk to their parents about, is blood sugar levels. And this may be something that you're really familiar with already. Having a really good understanding about blood glucose levels and how you can control your blood glucose is really important for mood, balanced energy, for weight management, all of those factors. So it's something I spend a lot of time talking to people about. Ideally, you want your blood glucose levels to be that dashed line that runs through the middle. So it goes up very gradually, down very gradually, up very gradually. That keeps you very, very stable. What we don't want, and a typical client that I see, and I have children, year 3 children, year 2 children that I've worked with, that have said to me they completely understand this and they come out of school with that hangry feeling, is what we don't want is this blood sugar going up really high, coming down really quickly, up and down. And then we're in this whole roller coaster, which massively affects our mood, our energy, and it can also affect our sleep. So probably one of the most important things to talk about is the importance of protein and fiber with all meals and all snacks. So just to explain it very quickly, a typical client of mine might say, you know what, I have a bowl of Special K for breakfast. So I think of a bowl of Special K, there's not really much protein there, there's not really much fiber. That's going to convert to sugar very rapidly. If it goes up very quickly, it will come down very quickly. Then this typical client says, I then need a large latte at about 10:30. So then you think latte, that's a lot of milk, that's a lot of milk sugar, the caffeine, that drives your blood sugar back up again. And this person sees themselves in this roller coaster going on all day, and probably by about 5 o'clock, they do need a glass of wine to kind of keep themselves going. So a few people nodding. So just being mindful about protein and fiber will help to slow down the release of your blood glucose. So in the morning, your blood sugar is at its lowest. What you then eat determines how it goes, you know, if it goes right up or gradually. So if you've ever looked at low glycemic foods, so being mindful of foods that don't convert to sugar very rapidly. So all white foods like white bread, white pasta, white rice will convert to sugar quickly. White potato very quickly. And when we think about fruit, any fruit that's tropical, grown in a hot climate with lots of sunshine, that will also convert to sugar very quickly. Dried fruit is also very high in sugar. So just give you an equivalent, 10 raisins has the same impact on your blood sugar as a whole punnet of blueberries. So, you know, sometimes we give children a small box of raisins as a snack. That can be equivalent to 30 punnets of berries, which is, 3 punnets of berries, which can be, would be huge. So just being mindful of this can be really, really useful. And I'm going to give you a few examples of things in a minute, but somebody this morning said they had egg for breakfast. So eggs are great because that's protein. If you put that with some fiber, that will then help to slow down the release of the sugar. So just understanding this can be key, but also this is really important for the brain. And if you've got a child whose behavior is really up and down, then just standing back and looking at what they eat or asking what they'd have for breakfast, you know, just trying to understand this and putting it to that child can be really, really helpful. We also know that hydration is important, especially for the brain. A recent study suggested that 75% of the population are dehydrated. And actually 75% of the brain is made up of water. So drinking lots of water is important, and dehydration can lead to shrinkage of the brain. So building that in into your setting is key, and I know you all do that anyway, so that's great. We also know that exercise increases blood flow and oxygen to the brain. And the research done around Alzheimer's has been quite interesting, because they found that exercise can be really beneficial. And that was probably one of the only things that's come out as really helping Alzheimer's. So, you know, getting children outside, running around, getting that oxygen to their brain can be really useful for them following on to their learning. So making food education real is also very important. And there's plenty of evidence around the impact of practical cooking in settings. Not only does it increase children's confidence, it improves their literacy around food. We also know that that low-income groups gain much more from practical activities. So providing these opportunities is valuable. And it's a great way to also engage parents, to you know, engage more cultural influences within your setting, and also develop some community links. So local farmers markets, farmers, chefs, restaurants, people that work, you know, run their own allotments. There's lots of different opportunities to engage people within the community as well. What is really important is ensuring that you have purpose in the cookery or play that you've sort of set up, and also through this, through working with food and children, you can build in sort of you know, food for the brain type approaches. You can build in energy-rich foods. You know, you can talk about foods in a positive way in the effect that they're having on their bodies. So as Jamie Oliver said at the beginning, it's really important for them to understand the effect of food on their body. And, you know, by providing opportunities, you can build that purpose into them. So, you know, if you get them doing something with fish, you could be talking about the brain, or even with water, you can be talking about the brain. So there's lots of ways that you can integrate activities in, which is giving them a very, very purposeful link. I don't know if you've come across the work of Bill and Claire, you'll see there on the right of the screen, the funny food, but they do some great food art, and they are brilliant, really bringing sort of different faces and expressions and characters to life through food. And I've seen several nurseries doing some work around that, which is really, really nice as well. Okay, so it's also great to you know, I thought I'd just try and inspire you with some of the things that we've been doing, but also things that you can then inspire other people with. So a number of years ago, I was asked, when I first qualified, I was asked by a school if I would create some recipes which would enable them to deliver cooking and nutrition within the classroom. And I wrote Heat-Free and Healthy, which are just simple recipes and lesson plans that can be delivered without any heat, and they can just be delivered with a big group of children. So you don't need their minimal equipment, you don't need you know, lots of space, and you don't need to worry about heat. And they're great recipes that you can just, you know, simply engage in with your young children. Following that, we then developed the book Now We're Cooking, which is about how you can integrate food across the whole curriculum. So, you know, when you're teaching something around, you know, in history, how you can then build food into that, you know, how when you're teaching something in geography or Mandarin or whatever subject you're teaching, how you can integrate the food. And we won an international award for that, and that's a really good book. And a lot of that good practice in the book came out of a school called Charlton Manor, which you may or may not have heard of. The head teacher there, Tim Baker, is doing great things around food. Their whole curriculum is delivered through food education. So they do beekeeping, they sell food, they run their own allotments. They, you know, food is like key to their school, and has had a massive impact on their children's engagement, their motivation. So they're an amazing school. So on the back of writing those two books, we then developed, we got asked to develop a young chef program, which was actually for years 5 and 6. And that was working with the NHS, and we developed that program, which was great. And this was getting age 9 to 11 children to cook, plan and prepare and cook a 3-course meal for their hero within a particular budget. And so many schools said to us, that's way too ambitious. That's like a GCSE project. You'll never get 9-year-olds doing that. And then when they actually see it in practice, they're like, wow, that is amazing. You know, it's fantastic. But our feedback on that was that so many children got to year 6 and they still didn't know how to cut or peel an onion, or, you know, they had no knife skills. They just didn't know how to do some of the basics. And many of the teachers said to us, you know, we teach them how to hold a pen and how to use a pair of scissors very, very early on, but we don't actually give them the other skills around food so that they can actually prepare and create food. So on the back of that, we then developed the Youngest Chef of the Year award, which is an award for nursery and reception children. And it's all heat-free again. And as was explained in the introduction, it's focused on the hungry caterpillar. It's a great award that you work through. You know, you sign up, you receive everything online, all the lesson plans, and then we send you out posters, stickers for after each session, and then our copies of our books, and then medals for every child afterwards. And we've also worked with NutriKids. I don't know if you've come across those little stories. They're great little stories like Billy Blueberry, Ava Avocado. They're little stories about children, and it works really well with nursery. Wanting to do something, or there's a particular barrier that they want to achieve, and then they do it through understanding about a particular food will help them. And really nice to also have a look at. Also, within our Youngest Chef Award, we have make at home recipe cards. So you can access those for free. You can send out those links to parents. You know, that's absolutely fine. It's just on youngchefoftheyear.com. You go onto there and there's a link called Make at Home, and there's several recipe cards on there that parents can then have a go at home, or you can have a go at as well within your nursery. So just engaging in some of these things can be really useful and can also help you to inspire your parents to also engage in some of these things as well. And I thought I'd just touch on a few practical ideas around snacks. So we've talked about blood sugar balance and the importance of protein and fibre. And so building that message into food cooking is also really important. So, you know, talking about protein and fibre and then actually delivering recipes that include those factors is key. So these are just a few examples of practical snack ideas. I've worked with quite a few different settings where we've delivered little sessions to parents where I've talked about blood sugar balance, which is something that you could also do or send home in a newsletter, and then some examples of things that they could prepare. So these are just a few ideas, but there's lots of ideas for if people want things sort of, you know, buy on the go, or a lot of children respond really well to squeezy, so things in a squeezy pouch. There's lots of different recipes around that as well. So just things like cheese flapjack. So that recipe is on my website, thefoodteacher.co.uk. So within the cheese flapjack, you've got lots of fibre, you've got some carrots, you've got some seeds, you've also got cheese, so you've got the protein in there. So that's a really great recipe. Polenta bread is another really good recipe. That's also on my website, but you can also have that with something like hummus or guacamole. So you're kind of building in some protein. Things like popcorn, that can work really well with, particularly with fussy eaters. Also, if you do have fussy eaters, trying to engage them in the food preparation can be helpful. And when they sit together as a group and eat together, that also can help with fussy eaters. And sometimes it's very, very small steps. So it's just trying, you know, sometimes you present food lots and lots of time before you can get children to even touch it, and then sometimes to eat it. So sometimes it's very, very small steps with certain children. Things like watermelon pizza slices, that's sort of a great option, and you can sprinkle desiccated coconut on top to look like cheese. They often really, really enjoy doing some things like that. So that's just some sort of practical snack ideas. So just some key takeaways. I realise it's quite a lot of information and it's a bit whistle stop, but the importance of focusing on food with children I don't think you can do enough around food education and building that into your everyday. Also thinking about nourishment, so thinking about the brain, some of those key nutrients around the brain that are really important. Blood sugar balance is a message that I share with everyone, and I think understanding that and building that into what you eat and your planning around food and snacks, it is vital when we think about our energy being much more balanced, our mood, and definitely our weight management is really important for that. Trying to engage children with a range of foods is valuable. And also as a setting, just think about the opportunities you've got, how you can develop food culture, you know, what are the opportunities that you perhaps haven't thought about that you could build in just to develop that a bit further. How can you support and inspire? Can you work with parents more? Can you engage them? You know, can you build in some nutrition info into your newsletters that go home? You know, some recipe links. Can you get people to share recipe links? You know, all of that can be useful. And do your offerings think about blood sugar balance as well? I think that's quite key. So these are my contact details. I'm at info@thefoodteacher.co.uk and youngchefoftheyear.com. If you'd like to find out much more about the nursery award, you can do that, and the link's on there. So I hope you found that really interesting. A bit of a whistle stop, but I hope you found that's something to think about.
That's brilliant, Catherine. Thank you very much indeed. That was really, really enjoyable. I have to say, I've written loads of notes, and the piece that interested me the most, and I've got quite a few questions around it as well, was really about the minerals in food and how that affected certain conditions. You said zinc and copper for ADHD, low zinc for fussy eaters, potentially iron for autism. Apart from being really interesting, how would our friends on the call get those minerals into children? What foods would they consider to add them in and help solve those problems?
Yeah, so things like so that's kind of the latest sort of research, you know, some information that I know, and I work with a lot of clients. So a lot of people come to me with ADHD children or autism, and I support them. So I kind of work with them on a personalized basis. But zinc, so what I find in my work typically is a lot of children and adults have very low digestive health. So if you have poor digestive health, then that compromises your body's ability to absorb these nutrients. So things like lemon juice on food, even bitter foods, those sorts of things can really help optimize stomach acid, which can then help with the absorption. But the other really important thing, which I talk to a lot of my clients about, which is probably very contradictory to what you do, is I say to people, you shouldn't drink fluid with your meals. So, you know, we always give children a glass of water with their lunch. That then dilutes stomach acid, which then compromises your ability to absorb nutrients, which is quite interesting. We should try and avoid drinking close to meal times. And in some cultures, that's how they do operate. So the other things, when we think about zinc, so we know zinc is very important for our immune health. We know it's important for our stress response, that we need a lot of zinc. If we get stressed, we use up a lot of zinc quickly, which is why our immune system then struggles. We need it for our digestive system. And you get zinc from things like meat, which I'm sure is built into the provision for food anyway in your settings. Other sources are things like fish, things like nuts and seeds, which would be given at home, not really in your settings. So those are some kind of the key places. You do get some from whole grains as well, a little bit of zinc, but and also the importance of lots of green leafy vegetables. You know, some of those bitter foods are really beneficial for our digestive system and help us absorb nutrients as well.
Okay, good, thank you. It's really interesting. So I've got a question here from Charlotte, which I think it will resonate with lots of people, and that's asking about how to support children on a vegan diet. I think a lot of people are approaching that way of life, but I think if you're not into that, sometimes it's difficult to really understand how you make sure it's nutritionally balanced. So What are your thoughts on that, Catherine?
Yeah, I don't know if settings do give guidance to parents, but just ensuring that at home they are aware of the nutrients that will be compromised when somebody's on a vegan diet. So it's really important that you have enough B12 and that you supplement with B12. So ensuring that people know that is really important. I think diversity of vegetables is key for a vegan diet, and to make it quite interesting, and lots of herbs and spices. But trying to make sure there is enough protein is really important. And that's what I often see a lot of clients. I don't want to make it typical, but I see a lot of clients who are vegan that have mental health problems. And I always try to focus on the amount of protein and fats. You know, they really need their good fats through through coconut, through avocados and nuts and seeds at home. Those are really important to get those fats for the brain. We know that 60% of the dry weight of the brain is fat. So fat is so important to fuel the brain. And so making sure they have enough fat and also enough protein. So the lentils, the beans, all of that is really key. But I would almost have some guidance that goes home to say, you know, this is what we will provide at home in nursery, but please be aware that whilst your child is following a vegan diet, or I'm sure you're aware that whilst your child is following a vegan diet, they need to have adequate levels of this, this and this, because there are certain nutrients they won't be getting from a diet and they do need to supplement, and that's really important.
Great, thanks, Catherine. So you talked about the sugar in raisins, and I have to say that really shocked me. I didn't know it was that bad. And you compared it to blueberries. Anna's asked if you've got any further advice on dried fruits like raisins and apricots. Do you think they should be used, or do you think we should try and steer clear?
Well, any dried fruit is very high in sugar because you've had the water removed, so it's a very concentrated source of sugar. So dates are high in sugar, but they do contain quite a lot of fiber. So that actually slows down the release of their sugar. And we also know that apricots are quite high in iron. So I would say have a little, but try and balance it with some protein. So if you're going to give some apricots, what protein can you put with that? Can you, I'm just trying to think what you would have with that. Would you have some cheese, or can you think about some protein that can go alongside it just to slow down the release of the sugar? But I would always recommend for fresh fruit over dried fruit, and think about the temperate fruits that come from the UK because they are the lowest in sugar. So your pears, your plums, your apples, and all your berries, they are the lowest sugar. And you can also get your really good rainbow of colours in there, because you can get your purples with your blackberries at the moment, and then your red berries, so you can kind of get your whole rainbow of colours in there. But just give you a few more equivalents because people really like this. Half a banana has the same impact as a punnet of berries. I think a slice of watermelon would have the same impact as a punnet of berries. So, just being mindful of that is really important.
Okay, good, thank you. So I've got a statement rather than a question from Justine, and she's talking about the fact that her children's diet was really, really good at early years, lots of rainbow foods, but now they're in their early teens, they've become really fussy, and she's understandably saying it's outside influences. I know we're not really talking about early teens, but have you got any thoughts on that, Catherine, quickly?
If I kind of hope that if they've had that good grounding, then they'll come back to it ultimately. But so fingers crossed that will happen. But also I would probably put a teen multi-supplement in there as well, just to make sure that they are getting enough nutrition. And as I touched on the brain development, so much happens with the brain during adolescence. And that's the time when they get quite independent, and things like caffeine are quite detrimental to the brain during that time. And we've got a local school who've now got a Starbucks within their school, and you think, wow, that's just so detrimental to the development of the children's brain. But it's just kind of letting them go through that independent stage, which I think is key. So hopefully they'll come back to it at some point.
Good. So we've had a question come in. We've had a few comments and questions about popcorn. And I think people have asked generally, can they give that snacks? And Nikki's responded to say, DFE is saying no to popcorn.
Probably no. Yeah, sorry, that was just on there from a parent talk, but probably no, because sometimes you get the little unpopped kernels as well, and I guess that could be a choking hazard.
Yeah, okay, great. Switching back to the vegans, we've got another question from Nikki saying that their team are transitioning to a mostly plant-based diet. What are your views on pea and soy-based proteins?
I think pea and hemp seed, if you can use hemp seeds, I'm not sure if you can, are good sources of protein. I wouldn't recommend so much soy because I think it's highly processed. You know, I guess it's up to you to do your research around that and what is typically given out within nursery settings. But I certainly work with my clients on a one-on-one basis and don't recommend soya because it is quite processed.
Okay, thank you. So a question from Charlotte, and she's asking about pudding ideas. Guidance that you have to provide a pudding at lunch and tea. Finding lots of parents are asking for their children not to have pudding and to be given a piece of fruit instead. Do you have any thoughts on that, and particularly around milky desserts? Any other tips?
No, I think that's a really good idea that they have fruit, you know, mostly, and then sometimes there's something a bit different. You know, just a natural yogurt, even like just serving natural yogurt with berries or something like that can be suitable. I would try and stay away from the sort of the stodgy puddings. I wouldn't kind of recommend that so much. The thing is, we all remember those puddings when we were younger. A lot of us do, with custard and the sponge pudding type things. And certainly the challenges around sort of carbohydrates and our concept of a good meal includes that kind of pudding. So I would try and avoid that if you can, and try and set some sort of long-term sort of role model around what is a good meal. But I think a piece of fruit is okay. Great.
Okay, well, that leads me nicely to tinned fruit, Catherine. Daisy's asking what your views are on tinned fruit.
Yeah, I guess it's okay as long as it's not in like a syrup, because often those syrups are very high sugar. And I guess it's also quantity that you're providing to the children and what you're providing it with. But yeah, I guess it's okay. But it's typically things like peaches and pineapple, which would be high sugar, versus the temperate fruits from the UK. But I appreciate that when we also think about provision, we are thinking about cost. And so that does pose lots of other challenges, doesn't it, around what we can provide. Yeah, very much so. Okay, Catherine, last question. What are your thoughts in jelly and Angel Delight? We ran a young chef program, and we did it across Welling and Hatfield, and we got all the schools to then come to submit their finalists, and then created their dish. These are 9 to 11-year-olds creating their 3-course meal, and one of the girls did strawberry Angel Delight as her pudding. And we had Chef Harry Lomas, who was former chef to the Queen. He came and judged it for us. And we do all the tastings and everything. And he tasted it and he was like, oh my word, this brings me back. And it was just like such a hit. It was a brilliant thing to do. I guess they're okay now and again within your settings. And they're a great thing to make with children as well, because they can see, and there's obviously a little bit of chemistry in there with the changes. So I think it's probably about balance and just kind of building that in. I hope that answers it.
It does, Thank you. We had lots of statements rather than questions, and I haven't really got time to go through all those, but thank you everybody for asking the questions. Catherine, thank you so much for today. It's been brilliant and also inspirational. Thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate your time. Appreciate you can't hear everybody clap but me, but there we go. Thank you again, Catherine. We're going to move over now to our friends Kyla and Jill from Watermead Day Nursery. I'm afraid I have to leave at this point, so I'm going to hand over to my colleagues Gail and Adele, who will take forward all the questions, and they'll be far more competent than I will anyway. But anyway, over to Kyla and Jill. If you'd like to take yourselves off mute, and Gail and Adele will take over. Thank you, everybody.
Hi. Hi. Just gonna move over to share screen. Yeah. Sorry, we're new to this. We're just trying to share the screen.
Yeah, good to go?
Yeah.
Right, first of all, welcome everybody, and thank you to Catherine. That was like an amazing amount of information, and certainly we're going to be taking a lot away from that today. Just a quick overview. I want to talk about what we do with menu planning, policies that we have in place, how we manage our snack times, meal times as social occasions, how we approach weaning because we're a full daycare setting, so we have very young babies right through to children transitioning onto school. We also have a whole raft of enrichment programs, of which cookery school is one aspect, and then some accreditations that we've worked towards over the last few years. So first of all, with menu planning, we offer 2 menus a year because changing menus is significant. It takes a massive amount of time, work, effort, consultation to get it right. So we do a spring summer menu and an autumn winter menu, but obviously we also provide vegetarian alternatives when meat and fish are offered, and similarly to other people who are with us today, we are getting more and more children with food sensitivities, allergies, and dietary preferences, including a number of our families who wish their children to follow a vegan diet. So that is proving quite challenging. When we're planning our menus, obviously there are a number of things to take into consideration. We look at what our children will eat. We try to include suggestions from parents as well, because we welcome comments from our parents. And also we rely quite heavily on our chef, who is, sort of our chef and sous chef are the ones who are preparing this food, serving this food. But there's cost, there's nutritional value. We want our children to enjoy what we're offering them, but also we're wanting to include quite varied food sources, food types, food textures, so that we are developing our children's palates for enjoying a breadth of different foods. Before lockdown, I'm sure lockdowns affected everybody, we also offered our parents an opportunity to come into the nursery in an evening to test our menus, and small amounts of all our menus were made available for parents to taste themselves, to see, to ask questions about. But unfortunately, with our last menu that we've just done, we weren't able to do that. But what we do is we produce our menu, we send it out on our online platform, and we do ask parents to comment. And we also ask parents to make perhaps suggestions as to what foods they would like to see included, or what foods they would prefer we reduce. And certainly going back to the point that Catherine was talking about with regards puddings, we actually offer natural yogurts at lunchtime, but then at tea time we offer things like fruit cocktail, so fresh fruit, or sort of like mixed, banana with custard, apple cake. They also have something that where avocado is used to produce cake, So, you know, we try to incorporate fruit within our tea time menu. All the time consulting with parents about dietary requirements, and 3 times a year we go out to all our parents asking them to update the information that we hold on their children, because some children come to us and they can eat everything, and then as time progresses they develop sensitivities. Other children come to us with sensitivities which they build up a tolerance to over a period of time. So we do ask for regular updating from parents on their children's dietary requirements, allergies, sensitivities, and food preferences. In order for our staff to kind of keep up with allergies, sensitivities, food preferences, etc., we do encourage staff to do their own research, to do reading around different dietary requirements of religious groups to which their children belong, vegetarians, vegans, etc. And then periodically at our staff meetings, we will have food, dietaries, sensitivities as an item on our agenda. Policies and procedures obviously govern what we can do, what we can offer, and I'm sure similar to all of you, we have policies that cover everything. We have policies on meal times, because obviously they're a key part of the rhythm of our children's day. We have policies and procedures on food and nutrition, food and drink, access to drinking waters, the weaning process, allergies and allergic reactions, and also specific guidance on families who would opt to bring their own food into the nursery, which is something that we discourage, because we want meal times to be a shared experience, and when, you know, one child is eating food brought in from home that we may not feel is that well nutritionally balanced, but the parent says, well, that's all they will eat. We do try to work with parents to enable the child to enjoy the diet, the food, the menus that we offer. So although on occasions, and it has been in the past only for short periods of time, we have supported new parents and enabled them to bring in food for their child. But we have tried to wean those parents away from that as quickly as possible.
It's there as a backup, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah, just as a backup. Meal times are social occasions. You know, meal times are there to be enjoyed, and, you know, kind of for children to be relaxed and comfortable. You know, sort of like dinner tables are either set up by the staff, or when children become able, the children set the table, put the cutlery out, etc. And it's an opportunity for staff and children to take time out and to sit and to enjoy the occasion, to have discussions about perhaps what they've been doing during the day, or experiences that they've had with their families, to talk about the food, and to encourage fussy eaters to try new food. And the experience of children sitting together eating very often encourages those fussy eaters to try things that, well, their friend is eating it, so perhaps I'll give it a try. And it's important for our staff to be aware of this, so that they too can, you know, sort of encourage the children in a positive way. and without putting pressure on them, because I think that children need time to be comfortable about trying new things, and we do encourage the children just to have a taste, and then possibly, you know, the next time, you know, that meal comes round, it's like, well, you know, you tried it last time and you thought it was okay. So it is about, you know, staff positively encouraging fussy eaters. Some of our staff choose to eat with the children, but they eat the same food as the children. They don't bring their own lunches and eat that alongside the children. They do, you know, they are encouraged to eat the same food as the children are eating. And again, you know, for the staff to talk positively about what they're eating or what they've tried, and you know, sort of like, it might be a food activity that they've done earlier in the day, recalling that. But you know, for meal times to be a pleasurable, enjoyable experience and not a battleground. And I think that, you know, sort of like where children are resistant, I think it is about, you know, giving them time, opportunity, to, you know, kind of move forward with different food tastes and textures in their own time. Promoting healthy eating through activities and experiences, and our cookery school. So we talk to the children about healthy eating, and through questioning, through games that the children play, different activities that I'm sure you've all got in your settings. But here at Watermead, we have an edible garden where our children plant seeds, plant young plants, and grow vegetables and fruit. So basic things, you know, carrots, peas, beans, squash, courgette, tomatoes, cucumber, raspberries, strawberries. We try all sorts. And so children start to learn, well, where does my food come from? And they enjoy, you know, sort of like planting and watering and nurturing. And then hopefully we get to pick. Some of our crops are better than others. And sometimes the children are more keen to try some things than others as well. But we do have, because we have quite a big forest school garden, and we've had raised beds built, and we have pots and containers of all shapes and sizes where children can, you know, sort of like plant fruit and vegetables. And dotted around the different outdoor play areas, we have several herb gardens that the children again plant, water, care for. And then the herbs sometimes are used in cookery, or sometimes they're used in different play activities as well. Our cookery school that we do, we have food activities across the nursery, from our youngest children right through to, as I say, our children who have just transitioned to school. But with our older ones, we offer, as part of our enrichment programme, a cookery school with Chef Davy. And Davy is a member of the staff team who is particularly keen on cookery and raising children's awareness of healthy eating. And so Chef Davy delivers a 10-week programme of different activities that are all linked to the EYFS. So each week there is a food activity, and that food activity is either a breakfast option, a snack option, a lunchtime option, a tea time option, or an accompaniment. And each activity has an activity that, so the children will do the cookery, and then while it is setting, cooling, resting, there is a game that the children will play that links into that food activity. And there is also a recipe card or a food activity that the children will take home with them to do with their parents. So, you know, we're kind of sharing this activity with parents as well. The children all have the chef's hats, the aprons. So it is, you know, sort of like preparing, you know, how you dress when you're cooking, hand washing, obviously, preparation of the area, gathering of equipment, yeah, right through to them actually being able to eat what they have cooked. Or on some occasions, some of our older children will do a food activity that then they take to another part of the nursery to share with a different group of children. And that's quite nice, you know, sort of like, you know, it might be that they are pureeing some vegetables, and then that puree is taken through to our baby unit. And a few, not all, but a few of our older children are able then to support the staff when the babies get to actually taste that, you know, sort of like as they're going through the weaning process. So again, you know, it is about that social aspect of sharing food, not just within the group, but with other children, with their friends. With the cookery school as well, we have Chef of the Day awards. So, you know, somebody gets to be Chef of the Day. And so, you know, the children really enjoy that. Children across the nursery, we get involved in the Big Soup Challenge, which will be coming up shortly. Is it October, November time? So all of our children get involved with the Big Soup Challenge. I think the idea is that, you know, sort of like you create soup and then you share it with perhaps the community or whatever. Again, you know, we've got COVID, but children will prepare soup and that will be shared with another group of children in a different area of the nursery. And again, you know, more a social occasion. And we do try to adopt a somewhat ethical approach to play activities involving food, because, you know, sort of food waste is something that we are aware of, but we do let the children play with food. What sort of activities do we do, Kyla?
So there's things like messy play including, so if they're making Play-Dohs, it'll be making them using oats or different textures, different spices and herbs to make them smell different. But then we're also mindful that we can't just use anything, because when you're doing the shopping at the moment, you know yourself, you'll go into the supermarket and they're bare. So it's taking into consideration what is still being able to get lots of. So pasta is always a good one to go to, because there's always plenty of pasta on the shelves. But it's things like making sure that the children are using them appropriately, and it's not just being put out because you need messy play on the menu that day. It's what are the children getting out of it? Do you actually need that out? Or can you put a different activity out that has the same sort of purpose, but you're not having to use the food sources? Something we have done recently, just going back to the cookery school, in our preschool, to get to know the children, because they're all new to us, our chef Davey put a message out asking where parents were from. So we had parents from Finland, Scotland, New Zealand, and for a whole week the children cooked their meals from different places around the world. So we had a Scottish day where the children did a Scottish meal, and that's what they ate for their dinner that day. They also had a Scottish pudding. There was New Zealand, so they was making a meal from New Zealand. That was their lunch for the day, and then they had the tea. And parents really loved the fact that they was learning about the culture and their backgrounds of where they're coming from. So it's a really good opportunity about speaking about home, because they might be making them with parents at home as well. I think we had some where they made a vegetable curry, and a lot of children's parents were, oh, mine don't like curry. But they ate the vegetable curry, they absolutely loved it. And because they'd prepared the food and made the food, they were really interested in eating it. And it's another way to get fussy eaters on board with the eating, because they've made it. So, oh, do you want to eat it because you've made it? And you can tell mummy and daddy all about what you've eaten today, that like they have at home or when they go back to their homes. So it's a really good way of involving parents as well as the children in their food activities.
Yeah. And we've gone for some accreditations, awards, and sharing of good news. And just going back to, you know, sort of like the point that Kyla made about us reaching out to parents and looking at cultural backgrounds of our families. Again, normally we would do that possibly on a face-to-face basis, but we're having to look for different ways of reaching out to our parents and engaging with our parents in a very meaningful way. And what better way than through food? With accreditations then, so we are accredited with Leicestershire Healthy Tots programme, and I'm assuming that Healthy Tots have programmes across the country, and that's a good programme to work through their accreditation for, because it does make you think about what you are offering. Also, we are part of the Rhs Gardening Awards programme with our edible garden. Obviously, environmental food agencies, their recommendations and things that they suggest. Charnwood COVID secure audit, and that was something that we did recently, which is local to us. But again, I think that most county councils and city councils are doing similar programmes. So that was a way of getting involved with our community, because again, that's proving more difficult. You know, we're having to be a little bit more inventive in terms of how we're engaging and really promoting our children's cultural capital. And then we have quite an active Facebook and Instagram account where, you know, we're all the time, you know, posting things about what we're doing, what we're planning, what's been happening in the nursery. So, you know, we're trying to engage locally, well, with our parents, but also locally, nationally, and possibly internationally, you know, who knows. Support information. So these are things that you might, websites that you might want to access for ideas and for guidance, and sometimes to answer some questions that you're thinking, should we be offering this, or what would be an alternative to this? And we found that HM Government Part 1 and guidance, and Part 2, which is a whole raft of menu suggestions, that's been very useful. Food Standard Agency, the gov.uk websites, food.gov.uk, BBC Good Food, the Healthy Eating Advisory Service, Department of Health, all of these websites. You know, you can spend your life searching these websites for information. But the more information that you've got, the more empowered you are, the more informed you are, the more information you can share with your staff, so that, you know, you can be, you know, providing the children with, you know, a healthy, nutritious diet whilst they're spending time with you. And there's Kyla and my contact details. If anybody, you know, wants to give us a call or wants to email us, you know, sort of like after this meeting, then we're always more than happy to speak to people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If we can get that screen, we'll share all the slides with everybody as well. How do we get you guys to stop sharing? Let's have a look.
Okay. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I'm a mum myself, and I was just saying to Gail, this is such a fantastic presentation that I think a lot of even parents would really benefit from today. So thank you so much. I love your cookery school idea, and and I think one that really helps with parent engagement, like you sending the recipes home so the parents can do that with the kids again, so kind of reinforcement, but also the social element. The kids actually get to share what they have done and their experiences with the other groups, and a lot of kids have been affected with COVID, so to try and build that social element back up, I think it's an amazing idea. So well done, really great, and thank you for sharing all those amazing support elements. I'm definitely going to go and look at some of those menus for some of those fussy eaters we all have in our homes. We've had actually quite a few questions, so if it's okay, if I can start asking a few of those. One of the staff, which you've already answered that, asking if your staff is eating, which I think is a really great idea. One of the things I wanted to ask is if a lot of parents potentially, it's easier to overcome at home just to give the child basically what they want to eat, and you don't want to have that battle at home. And as you've quite rightly said, we don't really want to make this a battle time. But how are you overcoming that kind of barrier, I suppose, with parents who just say, well, just give my child this and, don't try anything new? How are you overcoming that kind of barrier, making the parent maybe a bit more open to trying new things, for their child? Because sometimes parents are basically very fussy eaters themselves, aren't they?
So when a child starts with us, we fill a all about me sheet in with the parents on their first initial pre-visit. We will speak about menus on offer. We'll give a copy to the parents just so they've got it there for their reference. We ask the parents what the children likes to eat, if they have preferences, if there's things with fussy eaters. We ask for a list of things that they do eat while they're at home. One of the things tends to be plain pasta is one of the things we get all the time from parents, which we say we will use this as a backup, but we always will serve what's on the menu to the child and ask them to try it and give it a go, and then have whatever they do like in the background for them, ready for their second option if they're not eating what's on the menu. We do find it is a bit of a battle at times because they know that food is there in the background for them waiting. But it's about encouraging them, if you can try a spoonful of rice or a spoonful of your peas, then you can have your pasta. And it's that way that we then tend to get the child, okay, well, if they've had a spoonful of that, they've had a spoonful of that, can you eat half your plate today for me? And then you can have some pasta to fill you up. And eventually over time, we find that the child just wants to eat what their friends are eating. We did have one parent and they was like, nope, they will only eat cheese spread sandwiches. And when they went off to school, they was like, can you come and live with me? Because they eat everything you put in front of them. So,
oh, brilliant. That's a really great idea. With so many varied, and like you quite rightly said, a lot of children wanting to eat more vegan food, and there's a lot more allergies, certainly as children potentially haven't been exposed to a lot of those different food sources they would have had, in a different environment. How are you recording this to make sure that that information is up to date, and making sure that the staff as well is trained to the right level to potentially how they would react to an allergy, allergic reaction to what children might have to any food that the parent might not be aware of?
No, you go. You're, the allergy boards.
So yeah, we have allergy boards. So all children have, again, on their All About Me, we ask about any allergies that they're aware of. All of our staff in our rooms are first aid trained, qualified as well. So we have the EpiPen training if needed. If children have like certain allergies, we have placemats for the child. So we differentiate it. We have green, which is for vegetarian, so it's not a lifetime threatening, it's just a preference. And then we have red, which is an allergy, so we have to be mindful of what is being put in front of that child. If the child next to them is maybe eating something that they may be allergic to. Quite recently we've had a child start with us that even if the child brushes past it, they will come up in hives, so it's quite a severe sensitivity. So it's being mindful of those, sitting them away from maybe children that haven't got the same food as those, or sitting them with children that have dietaries very similar to that. It's just about being mindful. And we're a no sesame seed allergy nursery at the moment because we have a child with a very, very severe sesame seed allergy. So it's just being mindful, staff knowing the signs to look out for if a child does have an anaphylactic fit or reaction, and just, yeah, again, just being mindful and observant of the children I know that we say the staff sit with the children and eat, but they're not just sat eating, it's to be with the children, and it's better to be at their level where you can see the children eating rather than stood up where you're over the children, because you can actually see their mouths moving, you can speak to them, and you're getting that conversation back from them.
And we also invite, where there are specific food sensitivities or treatments that are required, if there's any sort of reaction, we have parents who come in at the end of a day's shift to speak to the staff who are caring for their child.
Okay. You mentioned sometimes that some parents will actually pack in those lunches for those kids. Obviously, you can advise parents that, you know, you've got these different allergies within your setting, and I can imagine it must be quite a concern if some of that food comes in, that potentially there could be a allergy product within that lunches. How do you keep those children apart, or how do you still, you know, manage the parents' expectations but not having the child feel completely segregated?
So we have a policy that we send home with the parents. So it's a guidance for families that are bringing in their own food. We will speak to them about what sort of foods they're going to be using. We ask them to clearly label. So if they've made a food product at home, we used to have a child that bought their own cooked food in and they wanted us to reheat it. So we had to ask for every single part of the ingredients that's on there. And it needs to be clearly labelled of when if it was in a container, when it was prepared. So it's following our food standards as well. So it's just being mindful and sending that home and letting them know that actually in your child's room we've got a severe allergy of sesame seeds, peanuts, or whatever the allergy may be. Please can you be mindful of this when you're packing your child's lunch?
Okay. One thing that Emma Tom asked, she asked if you guys charge for lunches.
So it's all in with the cost of the nursery day. So we're a full daycare setting. So the child has breakfast, snack, lunch, mid-afternoon snack, tea, and the late afternoon snack with us. So that's all in with their cost. Brilliant.
Okay. I'm just looking to see what other questions was there. So there's one question said, if a setting can do only one thing to help with nutrition, what do you think it would be? You know, with some people that do what a meal look. If there's one piece of advice you can give a parent or even help to educate a child, what would that one piece of information be?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a hard question.
Maybe try new things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that making meal times positive social occasions where children can enjoy coming together.
And involving children in their meal times as well. So like with the children preparing, you can talk to them about where the foods have come from, what they're good for, what parts of the body they might help with. So talking about different vegetables, and sometimes it's like, you know, the carrots help you see in the dark. Well, it's for your eyes, isn't it? Not that they make you see in the dark, but things like that help the children with, oh, I'm going to eat my carrots up because they help me see in the dark. So
do you have any, I know at Parenta we've done some placemats for some settings that you can download from the website that has those allergy to help practitioners. I know we've done some posters for the settings that you can download. Do you guys use any visual aids for the kids to see, you know, what different benefits they are for different products or different ingredients that can help? Or
we don't have visuals on the walls, but when we're doing our food cooking activities, we might get books out and look through books of where they come from in the world, or the plates, looking at the plates and how much of each food item they should be having on the plate, but we don't necessarily have them stuck up on the walls at all times.
It wouldn't necessarily fit that well with the pedagogy of our particular setting. But there are other ways of, you know, sort of like the children being able to access visual information.
Yeah, so it's a kind of reinforcement to what they've just kind of experienced as well. Yes, okay. Gail, is there any other questions that I've missed?
Yeah, I've got a couple here actually, Adele. the cookery school. Wow, I mean, that's so inspirational. That's amazing. Where do you get your inspiration from for the games that you play? You know, you talked about while the, I don't know, cake is rising or while the food is cooking. And then you obviously include the children in games, EYFS activities. Where do you get that inspiration from?
Well, from the recipes, really. We try to look at different games, and also we look at the skills and the knowledge development through the actual cooking activity, and we're looking as to how we can then extend that through a game, a puzzle, or a particular challenge that we set the children. So it would be really, we start with the recipe and the food content, and then the knowledge and skills that the children are actually learning through doing that. But then we're looking at, right, okay, then, so how can we take this a step further? How can we further challenge our children? When we're looking at the opportunities and experiences that we offer our children, we're always looking as to, well, how can we take this just a little bit further? How can we push our children a little bit further on? So it would be, and I don't know, years of experience, ideas from new staff that they bring in. So, you know, I mean, we take ideas from anywhere and everywhere.
That's fantastic. So yeah, always start with the recipe as kind of the central focal point, and then from there. We've got one last question actually that's just come in from Leah Bonaf. Should we be discussing with children about food at lunchtime, discussing what recipes we're using, perhaps what ingredients actually while they're eating, actually in the lunchtime period?
Yeah, absolutely. When the children have got the food in front of them, talking to them about the different food that's on their plate, because it could be that they've got a vegetable on there that they've never seen before or they've not come into contact with, and it's like, well, what's this on my plate? And then it sparks a whole conversation of where it's grown, where it comes from, what it's good for, what colour it is, how many you've got. There's lots of different opportunities, as well as talking about letting the children reflect on the day. There's always opportunities for questioning with the children that they don't realise that they're counting, if they're counting, well, not counting, but that they're learning by counting things on the plate, or talking about the colours of things, the shapes of things, talking about their likes and their dislikes. There's lots of different conversation opportunities.
And I think as well, it's an opportunity as well for staff to perhaps talk to the children about what they enjoy eating, not what they don't like. Always positive. That, well, do you know what my favourite vegetable is? My favourite vegetable is this, and look, I might bring that in tomorrow to show you, and we can look at that and we can cook that. So I think that, you know, it's an opportunity for staff to talk about their very diet, you know, sort of like, oh, I went out for a meal, I went to a restaurant. Do you go to a restaurant? Do you go to a cafe? You know, sort of, and again, it is about extending our children's cultural capital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing about I was just thinking about culture, so because obviously there's different religions and different views on. So I know you've said you bring your menu out twice a year. Is that adapted to include different cultures type of food, or is it very much a standard kind of? Do you adjust your menus? So, for example, if it's around Eid time, do you bring in different kinds of food for that, or?
So we do sort of food tasting activities when it comes to that time of the year, or if there's a celebration coming up. Going back to the activities where we was talking about where they were from, where parents were from at home, one thing that stuck with me is when they did Chinese food, they lowered all the tables so they was on the floor, and children sat on pieces of carpet like they would in a restaurant. They had chopsticks as an option to use as well, and the staff all sat with them. They had Chinese music on in the background, and it was giving them that full experience. Some of the staff had Chinese hats on. It was beautiful to sit and watch.
Oh, fantastic. Auntie Jill and Carla, can I just say, I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you so much for coming and sharing this with us today. I think as a parent, and obviously working with so many different practitioners, I think this has been so valuable. And again, thank you so much for Catherine for coming to talk to us today. We have really enjoyed it. Thank you from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We will share this recording with everybody later on today, as well as the slides. Obviously, it's content on there. But thanks to everybody for joining us today, and have a lovely day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Carla and Catherine, I'm just thinking, shall we jump on the other link? Yeah. Okay, we'll see you guys there. Thank you very much, everybody.